Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBOM is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBOM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hey friends, I just wanted to pop in and talk a little bit about MBO behind the scenes. When I entered the yoga world as a teacher, I was surprised by how many yoga teachers were struggling with the business side of yoga. And that's why I created MBOM. MBOM helps yoga teachers and studio owners become entrepreneurs. It helps you to go from surviving to thriving with your yoga business. I am on a mission to change the yoga industry, to teach yoga teachers and studio owners about the business of yoga, and to help you feel more confident, successful, and abundant. After releasing hundreds of podcast episodes, I want to create content that dives deeper into helping yoga entrepreneurs thrive and elevate their businesses. This is where MBOM Behind the Scenes comes in. Each week, you will get bonus content from the weekly guest or myself, diving deeper into how you can take the teachings and apply them to your business. This podcast is designed for yoga teachers and studio owners who are ready to take it to the next level. If you enjoy MBOM and have been looking for an affordable way to learn more, this is it. For the cost of 2 lattes per month, you will get never-before-heard content that you can't access anywhere else that will give you tangible ways to dive deeper into your yoga business. If this sounds like something you're interested in, let's dive in. Head on over to patreon.com/MBOM yoga and sign up to get behind the scenes now. Once again, that's patreon.com/MBOM yoga to get all the exclusive behind the scenes content. I'll see you there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the MBOM podcast. It is fun to be joining you here on a Friday, which is a little bit new for us. Normally, episodes go out on Mondays, but this month we've got a special bonus episode that I am very, very excited to share with you. This week on the podcast, I am joined by Kyle Sanok from Interval. Kyle is a fitness instructor with a passion for technology and helping yoga teachers and wellness entrepreneurs be able to run great businesses without the struggles of using technology. And that's really where Interval, the company that he works with, comes in. Interval has everything you need to run your yoga business, both in person and virtually. They give you an on-demand video library that will stand out. They record HD content directly to the platform with the ability to add music that students can adjust, and much more. So in this episode of the show, Kyle shares where his passion for fitness and wellness technology came from, how he ended up at Interval, and how Interval is changing the game for yoga teachers. It was so fun for me to talk with Kyle and to be able to get to know Kyle and the team at Interval and learn about the platform. And then also just hear a little bit about, how they're kind of looking at the current situation in the world, where the yoga industry is going, what's next for yoga teachers in terms of teaching online, and so much more. So we talk a lot about how we think the online world is here to stay and how a great software can really help you enjoy the process. So there's a lot of good stuff in this episode, and I think you're really going to love hearing from Kyle. So without further ado, here it is. Welcome to the podcast today, Kyle. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm stoked to chat with you, and I'm curious if you can tell listeners where you're joining us from today.
Yes, I am calling from sunny but also windy San Francisco out in California.
Amazing. I've only been to San Francisco once. I went in May. I assumed that because I'm Canadian that I would be warm the whole time. I was not.
It's a common misconception. It's like you see the sun and you see like the greenery and everything, and then suddenly it's 40 degrees.
Oh my gosh. My friend and I went to a Giants game, and I think it's the Giants, the baseball game. And we had to get sweaters because we were silly and only brought jean jackets. It was freezing.
I was going to say, I'm actually literally going to a baseball game tonight, and it's like in my bag, blankets, mittens, hat, all of the above. So,
well, you're smarter than me then. You clearly know the weather better than I do. So I love it. I need to get back to San Francisco soon though. It's such a cool city.
You're always welcome.
Amazing. Well, I would love to kick things off by just hearing a little bit about your journey with fitness and wellness.
Yeah. So my journey with fitness and wellness actually began, pretty early in high school, when I did a lot of running and swimming as kind of, I feel like most people, their parents force them into it at those ages. And so, I had an outlet through a lot of my like team sports and everything that I was doing then. And so in college, it kind of shifted to specifically focusing on group fitness classes as I lacked the accountability of, a team and having those programs and structures. And that really began kind of my like interest in group fitness. So the Soul Cycles of the world, the Barry's boot camps, everything like that. And so throughout college, I was kind of studying like math and data science, so a little bit more of the technology side of things, but I really kept finding these like outlets for fitness. So I actually worked at Barry's boot camp, which is this HIIT style class in Boston as a student ambassador. So it was just my job to bring in students to Barry's, and I got free classes. Students got free classes. It was great. I was the most popular man on campus because of that. But I also actually found work at another fitness startup called Move With, and they focused on audio classes for instructors. And so I worked there for a summer out in San Francisco, actually. And it was kind of a great first exposure into like how the fitness and technology worlds intersect. And so I started, I kind of like loved that experience and knew that like post grad, that was the thing that I wanted to continue building on, was this like intersection between fitness and technology. And it kind of blended what I studied in school, which was math and data science, with like my external passions of, going to Barry's, going to Soul Cycle, going on runs along the Charles River in Boston, and kind of like bring that all into one specific area that I could like, bring all my interests into.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's also amazing that you had that kind of foresight. I feel like when I was in university, I was just like, I have no idea what I'm going to do with this business degree I'm getting later on. I guess just like get an office job. So it's cool that you like thought about, okay, I have this thing that I'm studying that's not necessarily related to my passion for fitness and wellness. Yet at the same time, there is this intersection, because sometimes we forget about this whole like background side that goes on with the like HIIT fitness, gym, yoga world.
Well, I'll admit, I did have a little, I wouldn't say stumble, but exactly the period of, wait, what am I doing with my time? Because I actually spent a summer doing banking in New York City at JP Morgan after my fitness startup experience. And then after those two, I kind of compared them side by side, and I was like, I don't care about financial services at all. I was kind of like pushed into it just by, like external pressures on campus. And then much to my parents' dismay, I was like, you know what, mom and dad, like, I'm not going to be going into this banking financial route. I actually want to follow, this space and product and everything that I actually care about at the end of the day. So much to their disappointment, I kind of re-entered the fitness technology space after, that one blip, but it did take me a few shots to figure out that was what I wanted to do.
Okay, cool. That's cool to hear. But yeah, I worked at a bank as well. It was one of my like summer jobs in university. And I was like, nope, not for me.
Exactly. You got to try it and then just see and know for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. This is actually something that when I work with like newer yoga teachers, this is something that I teach them. So you've identified that you want to teach yoga, but even within teaching yoga, there's so many different specialties that you can have or people that you could teach. And I usually say like, just say yes to as many opportunities as you can that you're qualified for when you start out, because that's how you kind of get that like pile of no's. You and I have this like finance bank experience as our like note pile, but we wouldn't have known that for sure if we hadn't tried it.
Totally. And I think like, especially, the idea of just rapidly iterating and seeing, what do your students respond to and what are you responding to? What do you like teaching? Kind of what is the style? Like being able to just like quickly test those things and seeing what fits and what you vibe with and what your students vibe with is just kind of I think, huge asset going forward to really like find your niche, find your offering, et cetera, for instructors.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And so you enter kind of this like wellness technology space. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I found, I work for a company called Interval, and we basically focus on being a platform for individual yoga instructors or boutique studios to launch their virtual presence. So when I was looking at kind of the intersection of fitness and wellness, I knew I really wanted to be connected to the end users that I was actually building products for, and just empowering kind of like these instructors that have been working in the studio model their entire life and kind of, following very structured, rigid programs, and really saw interval as like an outlet for instructors to express their creativity, individuality, and actually, rapidly test and prototype and iterate on the types of classes that they were offering. So I currently work in like business development and saw like instructor onboarding. So I get to interact directly with instructors, hear about all these different types of offerings that are bubbling up, from yoga to meditation to like hybrid HIIT yoga style classes. And so that's kind of been my main work in this intersection of the space right now, is kind of building a product for yoga instructors and individuals, kind of like, independent instructors. That's been my main entry into the space currently.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. I love what Interval's up to. And I think that just being able to have something for individual instructors is so key right now. And I'd love to maybe talk about like, the last sort of year of everything that's been going on. I guess it's been a bit over a year at this point. Kind of where were you at and what were you doing, I guess, when the pandemic hit in March of 2020? Were you working with Interval at that point or teaching classes, or what were you doing?
Yeah, so good question. So at the start of 2020, at the pandemic, I was actually still in college. And that is when the pandemic hit and everything. I was doing my work at various boot camp, bringing students into classes, everything like that. So March 2020, I got sent home from school early, and had, like my Harvard graduation at home with the TV and everything there. But throughout that entire experience, I saw that doing my group fitness classes that I had been doing all throughout my, senior year, junior year, sophomore year was basically just robbed from me, right? I'm doing all these classes with my friends and instructors and everything like that. And then at the start of the pandemic, I'm at home with my parents trying to figure out what to do. So I started reaching into kind of, seeing that there was a need for the space in terms of like working out with my friends, as well as working out with some of my favorite instructors in Boston. And I was kind of like exploring, looking at some Peloton classes, and loved what Peloton was doing in the virtual experience. And so then an investor who I was kind of like chatting with about different startups in the space introduced me to Interval back in, I'd say, August. And he was like, oh yeah, this company is basically building a platform for individual instructors to launch a Peloton quality virtual offering, right? And then that kind of, registered with me with, wow, yeah, there's so much individual talent out there, and that should be put on the same pedestal as a Peloton quality instructor. And they should have the software to be able to do that. So through my interviews with Alex and who's, our CEO and founder, and I think just like playing around with the product, seeing the instructors that were using our platform, it kind of registered that, oh yeah, this is the space that I want to be working in right now, is empowering these individual instructors, because it was something that I was missing in the pandemic. And I did like the Peloton experience, but I knew that there was a level of connection that I could form with like my favorite Boston instructors and my favorite DC instructors. So it kind of all happened, timely, where I found the company because it was serving a product need that I was actually searching for, and then decided to try and get a job there right after.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thanks for sharing that. And I really like feel for anyone who did any type of graduation in 2020 or 2021. Like, just so lame that you had to do that from your couch. So I'm sorry that happened to you.
It's okay. We got to cook a whole brunch spread. There was plenty of champagne, and, we didn't have to sit through a 2-hour long ceremony in the freezing cold. So
That's true. That's a good point. I guess being able to just be like, okay, I'll just show up when it's like my friends' names are getting called and then my name's getting called is actually a pretty good silver lining of that.
Exactly. Pros and cons. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's really cool, kind of looking at just like what was happening in the world, and then looking at companies that were, kind of stepping up and meeting the needs for teachers and fitness professionals and that type of thing. Because I feel like just from my perspective, like working with studios and yoga teachers, I feel like the the yoga world and the fitness world was kind of thrown for this loop. And it's
Mhm.
sort of interesting because it's not that online didn't exist. Like it did exist prior to March 2020. I mean, there were kind of these major platforms that had, recorded videos and monthly memberships and that type of thing. There were people doing some forms of maybe like online privates or that type of thing, but it really wasn't happening in the capacity that it is now. And I feel like looking back on it, I'm sort of like, why weren't we doing this before? You
Mhm.
know what I mean?
Yeah, I've also thought that. And I think, and there's probably a multitude of factors, but one of the things that I do always kind of nail down to is the perceived activation energy of I'm going to go off on my own and ask people for money and assert my offering. There's like a first barrier, which that's just a scary thing to do, is to, say, I'm going to leave the comfort of a studio that's giving me a schedule and giving me a, like set rate for my classes and bring in students, and then shifting that to saying I have to go out on my own. And so the pandemic was a forcing mechanism to basically launch instructors into that, whether they liked it or not. And then I think there was a technological barrier too, which is an instructor would say, how do I do that? Right? Like, do I go on Mindbody and launch my own classes as if I were a studio? And there wasn't quite anything that served like an individual creator in the fitness space yet.
100%. You're completely right. Because I think, I have seen like smaller studios, or I guess maybe like people who have their own spaces who are kind of like a one-off teacher with fitness or yoga. I've seen them, have their own Mindbody. But the thing I've heard consistently is like, this is so expensive because Mindbody, I think,
Yeah.
starts at, 100, 150 a month, upwards of 200 or 300 a month. And that's a lot when you already got maybe like a rent charge and you're doing all your own like classes and marketing, it becomes really hard to make a sustainable business.
Yeah. And especially like there's so many bells and whistles for a studio management software in terms of reporting and pulling in all these different, like membership combinations for in-person and all this stuff that doesn't quite apply to the individual instructor. And yeah, so cost was a huge, prohibitive measure for people being able to start and like listing their own schedules, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one thing that you mentioned that I want to talk about a little bit is you were talking about, this Peloton method, and obviously Peloton has done quite well over the last year.
Yes, they
Many
have.
people I know have invested in Peloton bikes, and I totally get it. Like, especially if you maybe have your kids at home, if you're a parent, or, maybe now you're working from home, so and your gyms are closed, you now have this opportunity to just go down to your basement and hop on the bike, do like a 30,
Mhm.
45-minute class, get a great workout in without even having to leave your home. Yet there is this component that I think is missing, which is that like actual personal interaction. And I know you guys have really looked at this with what you've done at Interval. Can you touch a little bit on that aspect of it?
Absolutely. So, Peloton has done a fantastic job at exactly what you said, like building a very engaging virtual experience, making it convenient. But, some of those areas in which I think they fall short are these instructors are larger than life celebrity figures, right? Like you're never going to be getting brunch with Kendall Toole on a Tuesday, who's a Peloton instructor. Whereas, there's an entire world of instructors that you've developed relationships with over time that you've been able to kind of like interact with. And so we think that if that instructor has the software to really, mimic, not necessarily mimic, but really just give like students a really fantastic software experience, then that's going to make students want to go to your instructor just like that much more. And so specifically some of the things that I think are important about Peloton, but, ways in which we're thinking about how we're building an interval are kind of students being able to control the music. So on our platform, we want to make sure that students are always really like in control of their content and feeling like it's custom to them. So we have like a music slider that we use when instructors record to our platform. And similarly, we kind of want to build in all these much more social features of being able to see which friends are in your class with you, take classes with them, and create that community so that an instructor has like a destination for their community. And we could create like, mini, I'd say, mini Peloton communities that will just grow based on the individual instructor by the best virtual experiences possible for students. So we do some of that through music, some of that through video quality. And, Peloton has had tremendous success because what they've been able to do is build an on-demand library that has just grown with every live class that they teach, right? So every single class, they're pumping out HD content to the platform that students can take anytime. And so that's really what Interval's focusing on kind of going forward is we know that I think the future is going to be some hybrid of in-person and virtual. And so I'm kind of trying to equip our instructors through our product to be able to capture their content, whether it's hosted in person, whether it's recorded on Zoom, but you should be capturing that content and building out an on-demand library so that students can access it and watch it whenever they want. So we're really focusing on this video streaming, kind of like video library playback, as that's one of the huge selling points of Peloton is that there are hours and hours of content that you can basically watch at any point. And instructors over the years have already been producing this much content. They just haven't been recording or capturing it throughout their entire, time running from gym to gym, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that just to touch on the music aspect first, I think this is like super brilliant because I know this is one thing just working with studios and teachers that's been extremely challenging. Like there's some sort of, plugins and workarounds that you can do, using Zoom, just like we're recording right now, but it hasn't really been very smooth or very integrated very nicely. Like one thing we tried at one studio was, we have like a Spotify playlist and everyone gets the playlist they get the channel and then the different playlists for the classes are added. And it's kind of like, okay, I'm starting my playlist now. And then everyone can like press play if they want. But the problem with that is you need to do it on a different device. So it's not competing with the instructor. And it just has all felt really clunky. So I think that that's a really cool option that you guys are adding.
Yeah. And music's always been on all these platforms like an afterthought, like, oh yeah, this is, how do we now add music? Where as we started knowing the importance of music in the classes, and we're like, this is something students should have control over. And this should be something that instructors can offer to their students, share their playlists, get students to kind of like engage with their music and make it really front and center rather than that afterthought fact.
100%. I mean, I think for yoga, it's kind of like, okay, you can do a yoga class without music, but I feel like for a lot of other things, like music is key. Like music is key for a good spin class. Music is key for a good like hit class. Like doing that kind of stuff without music, it just kind of makes it sort of terrible.
I completely agree. And it also adds like this other, window or layer of connection to think, oh, my instructor, Amanda, she's playing some, Taylor Swift right now. Like, let me go. And I also love Taylor Swift. Like, I'm going to DM her and talk about it. Like, it adds that personal connection. As music is a really personal thing that just increases the strength of, the community that an instructor is able to create.
Yeah, absolutely. The amount of times that somebody's come up after class and asked me like what song I played during class or something is pretty significant. And you kind of just don't think about it as, I guess, something that you absolutely need to have. But, there's that part. And then I also think it can really add to kind of the atmosphere and the ambiance of a yoga class, like really help people kind of get out of their heads and into their bodies and just settle into their practice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing. One other thing I wanted to touch on that you said was just this idea of, you mentioned like with Peloton, they have these, massive kind of instructors that, it's cool to obviously be able to do a class with, but you'd never really get to like connect with them on the same level if you didn't have that. And I think it's kind of interesting because in the yoga world, I feel like that's sort of what online was like previously too. Like if you look at Glow Yoga, for example, which is a massive online platform that's been selling memberships for years, they've got these big name teachers like Catherine Budig and Jason Crandall and Tiffany Cruikshank and there's probably a bunch of others, Amy Ippoliti and stuff like that. These are teachers that you can practice with, but they don't teach at studios anymore. They offer workshops maybe a couple times a year. Maybe they offer training. So it's like the most accessible way to practice with them is through these online classes. And I think one thing that's really cool about this shift that we're seeing is now we get to practice anywhere in the world with like our favorite local teachers. And as much as I love these like, big name spin teachers or yoga teachers, I think there's something really like quaint and nice about being able to take your like hometown yoga studio, yoga teacher with you anywhere that you go, or be able to practice with them anywhere.
Absolutely. And I think it also adds to, a student's overall like wellness or fitness kind of wellness mission is, if you're on a program with someone and then you do go and move, or you do go on a travel and trip, like you should be able to access those instructors' classes to keep them as integrated in your, like normal day-to-day schedule as possible. And I think, of course, like we've all seen, we have our local studios, our local instructors, and that we already are friends with. And I think that especially, rather than going to a YouTube video where you just click play and there's like some random person with 20 million subscribers, knowing that you can ask your instructor at the end of class, like, hey, I couldn't quite get this pose. Like, can you help me? Can you help figure it out? Or being able to, leave a comment on the video and saying, hey, this was so great. And knowing that an instructor is going to see it and respond to you and feel really seen. That's honestly some of the most important things I think in the fitness and wellness space, is just a student knowing that like an instructor, or knowing that, a wellness professional is seeing them and hearing them, right? Like fitness and health is such a personal space that knowing that there's a real human at the other end that you actually trust, that is there to kind of only improve you, is a much comforting and much more compelling reason to stick with an instructor, which is why, an instructor doesn't need hundreds of thousands of subscribers to really make a decent revenue in this new virtual world. But you need like max, maybe 20, 30 dedicated students, and you can create an incredible, like, revenue offering for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think this is one of the things that people may have thought kind of in the past, like, oh, I don't have, 50,000 followers or even 10,000 followers on Instagram. And, I don't have that many people kind of interested in what I do. Like, I can't create my own business. I need to rely on the studio. But I think you're right. Like, so many yoga teachers, yes, yoga studios have traditionally done, a lot of the marketing and stuff like that. But yoga teachers are kind of the heart of those studios. Like, people often will come for specific classes. And if you have, 10, 15, 20, maybe more people coming to your weekly classes, you probably have enough people to start your own platform.
I completely agree. And I think even as like a lower barrier to entry is, you can start posting on-demand videos and start building out like a video library even, so that students can get a little peek into, what your classes are like and just practice with you wherever you want on the go. And it's not like you have to completely leave the studio model, but start building out your own business in parallel if it's too scary of like an initial jump. But yeah, if you do have like a dedicated 15, 20 people, like that is enough to do your own live classes and support yourself in a business. And I think that's one of the, just like you said, one of the biggest misconceptions is that if I don't have 100,000 Instagram followers, how am I going to be able to monetize? Through things like memberships and all of those new pricing structures that you can really just like take all the value out of yourself as an instructor. Now you can make a pretty strong revenue, like for yourself fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I completely agree. And yeah, just kind of with that too, I love that you're talking about, we've got the live classes, but then there's also the on-demand portion of it, which can be, these recorded classes, and they can be all sorts of lengths. And I think it is really advantageous for yoga teachers to be offering, a combination of both, and definitely have some recorded videos, because then it does kind of give that, kind of Peloton vibe. Like, the reason they're doing so well is because people can practice with them anytime that they want. Like, I think that people are really looking for that ability, because, as much as our schedules are super flexible, I think there are also a lot of things about this sort of new world that we're living in that also make it hard to get to a class at a certain time. Does that make sense?
100%. I completely agree. And being able to offer different style classes of 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 50 minutes on your own time means that, your students now have the flexibility. And I think if the pandemic showed us one thing, it's that, now we're at home and we might have a pocket of 30 minutes in the day in which we don't really want to work, but we want to do some sort of movement. And, that's the perfect time for the 20-minute flow class, or that's the perfect time for, like a quick meditation. And so I really think the power of like a varied on-demand library, exactly what you said, is it's just for, students' flexibility and being able to, now that people are working from home more, like if you're going to attend a live class, you're probably going to try and you're like scheduling it ahead of time, or you're going to go to a studio. But on demand is perfect for those one-off moments where students are just like searching for a quick bite, a quick flow, or they can plan their, 60-minute flow class at 6 a.m. in the morning and get it over with in their house without having to like schlep to a studio and then schlep back. So the on-demand just gives flexibility to students, and really it frees up time for instructors too, to record content on their own time whenever they want without having to, fight for a primetime live spot at their studio. So it really just increases flexibility on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. It's something that we started doing at one of the studios that I work with in Canada, like almost immediately. Was just like told all the teachers, like just hit record. Every time you teach, we started by just using Zoom and then upgraded our camera and now record on there. But it was kind of this like, hey, our members are still paying us for this service that's not the same as what they were used to before. Let's like build them out something, where they feel like there's this added bonus. And obviously it's shifted a lot over the last like year or so, where we've been able to, make it its own thing and upgrade the quality and take down some of those like really old ratty videos that we started with and that type of thing. But it is something that we've heard from students, like they love when they can't make, that normal class with their normal teacher, to be able to hop on the platform and just watch a video and do the class that way.
Yeah. And I think it's so funny to see the arc of some instructors, videos that they show me from March of 2020 to March of 2021, where it's, your phone like tilted on a random tripod versus the really complex camera setups that people get. And I think that, yeah, the ability to record like high quality content. And that's why we've focused a lot on like the on-demand video playback, because we want that experience to be, like I said, as engaging, as exciting as a Peloton. And so being able to add in commenting and being able to see the playlist, as well as all of like adjust the music, like all of those on-demand experiences are going to make you feel excited about taking a class, not just, and it's going to draw a student away from just choosing a YouTube video, while giving the instructors the flexibility of recording whenever, wherever, and students being able to practice there too. But it's definitely, the quality is like a huge thing that people have struggled to figure out. And we at Interval are always testing new softwares, new microphones, new cameras to make sure that we're giving the best advice to our instructors.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Maybe we can get some of your tips then, because I feel like this is something that I know a lot of yoga teachers are still kind of like, help me out. I would love to hear like what you guys are hearing from the people that you work with, like what's working really well for audio, for video, that type of thing.
Yeah. So we definitely recommend like getting any sort of webcam that you can plug into your computer that's actually like that gets up to 1080p. So we really love like the Logitech 4K streaming camera that you can just plug on top of your computer, and has a nice wide angle. So even if you have a small space, it actually makes the space look much larger. So we really love that camera. We've tested out so many microphones, which has been a lot of fun. But I've kind of settled as like a personal favorite in the Rode Wireless Go, which is a great, like small, compact, around $200 mic that will just get you, you can clip it to your computer and then clip it to you in your practice, and the audio comes across really clearly. But, one of the other pieces of the software and kind of like pieces of the puzzle that we're really trying to solve for, like I said, is that music. And so we always recommend through our setup that an instructor captures their audio in the clearest crystal sound as possible. So, don't play your music in the back of the room and then try and stream that through Zoom, but make sure your like microphone is only picking up your audio, which is why the Rode Wireless Go works. Any kind of like over the ear headset microphone is a pretty powerful kind of solution too. And then specifically back to, the cameras, there's actually a really compelling case for like just using your phone camera, whether it's on Zoom or there's actually an application called Webcam Plus that allows you to make your phone into a camera for your computer or for Zoom. And so we really have instructors, we recommend using that one too.
Awesome. Thanks for all of that. I actually just got, I don't know if it's the 4K version, but I just got the Logitech HD 1080, and mostly because I'm not really making that many yoga videos, but because my laptop's camera is really bad. So I was like, I need a webcam because it just looks totally unprofessional. Well, actually, it just looks like I'm in the 80s more so because it's so fuzzy, but it's a great camera and it wasn't that expensive at all.
I was going to say, and that's like a small, investment in your setup and your studio that students notice, right? And the problem with Zoom is that when you do record it on the Zoom, it kind of decreases the quality. And that's why when we focused on our recording, we were like, we want to preserve the quality that your camera is able to record in. So if it is the 1080p, then we'll be able to do that, because that's students, they only can take so many fuzzy Zoom recordings before they're like, okay, now I'm going to go to a crystal clear YouTube video. And really, if you have a high quality camera, like you should be being able to record in that to maximize the quality there. Because exactly, yeah, you don't want to be watching a video and being like, is this from the 80s with the fuzzy lights and everything?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my computer has a bit of damage, so it's particularly bad, but I know even like my husband has a relatively new MacBook Air, and even he prefers to use like a webcam if he's doing any type of like professional work call or that type of thing, because it just makes it that much better. And that was really something that we found with the studios, like both studios I work with upgraded their cameras pretty early on in the pandemic, just because it's like, I mean, people are paying for these classes. Like we didn't lower the value of the memberships or anything like that. Like we want to make sure that they're getting good quality stuff, because I mean, you can do something like Glow Yoga for, I mean, I think their membership's like $25 a month or something like that. And they have professional, like they bring teachers in and professionally film. So as much as like we're not trying to compete with them, it's like kind of inevitable that we are competing with them in some ways. So we don't need professional film crews, but we do need to make sure that we're audible and visually look good.
Exactly. And I think, especially from the student perspective, and we saw this early on in the pandemic too, but students flocked to the virtual teachers, or the community teachers that seemed like they kind of knew what they were doing, or really investing in the offering for their students. And I think that comes across in little things like a microphone and a camera. And then similarly, like, they have a platform or a space for students to go and book. And because in the pandemic, we saw, students had no idea what was going on for sure. Instructors also kind of had no idea what was going on. And so to give your students that assurance of like, I got it, I know how I'm offering these classes to you, like, here's like, I'm investing in this camera, this microphone. It's also like a really nice reassurance for students of, okay, I'm in the right place with someone who kind of gets it, is understanding how and why they're teaching virtually. And I'm like, want to join this community. So yeah, it starts with the small things like a camera and a microphone for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think too, you touched on something as well. Like if you do have, a nice Android or a nice iPhone, like the cameras are really good on them. And I'm not familiar with that app that you said, but that sounds super cool where you can just turn that into your camera. Cause I think that, for a lot of people, they're like, I spent so much money on this, like, device that I carry around all the time. Like, can I just use this? And it's cool to know that there are possibilities with that. And then I love the Rode Wireless Go. That's definitely a microphone I've been recommending over the last year. It sounds good. It's like super durable for fitness and yoga, which is what we need.
And it's also so cute. It's so small and cute.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. Like with one of the studios I work with, we started with, it was a different Rode microphone. It was a little bit of an older variation. And it was one that had like a big kind of clunky body that you had to clip on yourself. And then there was a wire and you had to put the thing over the ear, and then had another piece that went to connect to the laptop. And I mean, it was fine. It's just like, because some people are handstanding, some people are like rolling around on their backs. It just got dropped and kind of, the cable ended up getting ruined really quickly. And we were just like, this is not sustainable. Like we can't go through a microphone every 2 months at a studio where like, we have to be closed. Like we're kind of operating at like half capacity type thing.
Exactly. Yeah. The cords are always like it's twisting you up in a downward dog. That's the least ideal. But it's definitely,
yeah, for sure. And then you hit it and like it makes that awful noise. Like, it's not ideal
like,
at all.
did a bomb go off? Like, is everything
yeah,
okay?
they're like, that is not Zen.
Yeah, that is the balance of keeping it as Zen in the virtual space while also dealing with all the tech issues has been really funny. One instructor, which I forgot that I took this class, but I, went through the flow. And then when we got to Shavasana, we stayed in it for like 3 minutes, and then she just turned off the Zoom meeting. So it was kind of like we shavasanaed out of the virtual space and into the physical again, which was kind of fantastic.
That's a cool idea. I've never
Yeah.
seen a teacher do that, but I really like that idea of like, okay, you can kind of keep lying here or get up as you want. I think that's really neat.
That was definitely fun. I've seen a lot of different variations on how to do the virtual thing, but that was one of the most notable.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure you've seen a lot of cool stuff over the last little while just working with Interval. I'd love to just hear if there's any kind of, business lessons or any kind of, interesting things that you've observed that are working well for teachers that you want to share here today.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we're really proactive about at Interval is not just positioning instructors now towards like in the pandemic, how can we be a platform for your business? But we are really thinking going forward, what is the future of fitness going to look like? And I think one of those, obviously one of the pillars of that is it's going to be a combination of in-person and virtual classes in some sort. Like we all love the in-person experience. And so as far as like the biggest business tip that I give to instructors is start recording your content, whether you're recording a 20-minute flow somewhere on your phone in a park, on Interval in your studio, wherever, like start recording your classes and building out your on-demand library, whether you're like posting your Instagram videos to, a platform or whatever, because that's going to show students that, okay, this instructor has like a library, they have content. And if a student practices with you in a studio, knowing that they have a library to reference, if they really, like you and like your atmosphere and your practice, then they might subscribe, and that's going to be passive revenue for any instructor starting out. So I really do think the importance of an on-demand library is like one of the best things any instructor can start doing for themselves. And so that's kind of like the first thing. And the second thing, which is related, is really just don't be afraid to put a price around it, right? Don't be afraid to put those classes behind some sort of paywall. And I think the best way to do that is a membership, just as that, like I said, passive revenue. It means that you can start doing more kind of like community engagement, tracking your students and really building relationships with them, which is kind of like the tertiary goal is like build a community. But being able to kind of like set a price for your classes and being like, my content, I think is worth this per month or this per year or this per week, shows students that, like I said before, like the instructor kind of knows what they're doing. The instructor is saying, I know that my offering will help you in X, Y, and Z ways, but there's a price associated with that. And so I think that the two biggest things, like I said, are just start building out a library, putting a price to the library, and then adding content/community features for your students over time.
Amazing. I love those tips so much. I'm completely on board with all of that. I feel like I think that there's a place for offering something for free to your community or doing something where you can do by donation or give back in some sort of way. I think that that's definitely a beautiful, thing to have. But as yoga teachers and, fitness instructors and all that good stuff, I feel like we really do need to be charging for our offerings. There's a lot of value in the services. And I think people see that value too. So many people are willing to pay for classes, and having it online doesn't like degrade it or make it any less potent for people. I mean, we've talked about Peloton so much. Like that's a perfect example. Like people love cycling and spin so much. They're buying bikes for their own houses,
Exactly.
Like people need this stuff.
and that's the thing is like, if you have a software system or the camera or the microphone equipment that makes it a better and like engaging high quality offering, then you're just as competitive with the Peloton, the, Glow Yoga, all of those big production style companies out there. So any instructor can do it. It's really just, matter of kicking it off.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like this is a perfect time to talk a little bit about Interval, because I know we've mentioned them a little bit since you're working for them and talked a little bit about what they do. But can you share a bit more about, just how Interval can support yoga teachers out there listening, and then how they could learn more about Interval?
Of course, I always love sharing what we're building at Interval. But our platform is intended to give any instructor, any individual instructor or small boutique studio all of the tools that they really need to run their business. So from a business perspective, we handle any sort of scheduling and payments and memberships and all of that stuff. But then from the video perspective and the content perspective, we really focus on bringing together all aspects of the fitness experience, from on-demand videos to live classes to being able to book in-person classes as well. And we have kind of three main principles that we focus on in our product, which is one, quality of videos. Second, ease of use. So instructors and students just being able to navigate really easily. And then finally, like community aspects. And we've kind of seen that when you combine those three things together, it not only creates gives instructors and studios what they need to run their business, but it actually makes something students want to join. And that's the most important thing that you can have in this virtual space, is like a destination for students to want to take classes and a class experience that they're excited about, not just that YouTube video that they found by searching, 20-minute flow. So our platform, to get at that quality piece, we have our own software where you can record your classes directly to the platform in HD, which gives both your students a better video experience rather than that kind of grainy Zoom recording. And we actually allow students to adjust the music in class. So every student has their own custom kind of music slider, so they get their own output. Then for some of the community features, we have features like commenting and being able to favorite videos, share them with friends to really start generating kind of more of that community feel. And then finally, as I mentioned, the ease of use is so important. So in the virtual space, any sort of friction towards accessing a class, like making an account or doing all these other kind of unwanted activities, are going to decrease the amount of conversion that you have purchasing your on-demand class or booking a live class. And so we make our platform kind of as easy to navigate as possible for both instructors and students. So it feels like you're just going to a yoga studio, putting your credit card down and, walking in. And so we're completely passwordless. So it's not like you're signing up for an unwanted third-party account, but rather like a much, much cleaner kind of user experience for your students so that you can actually grow in the virtual space. And so while we started out as virtual, really focusing on kind of a video library and on-demand playback, which is still our main focus, we still have all of the features of live streaming as well as in-person bookings, so that any studio or instructor, whether they're hosting a pop-up or whether they're hosting, a class in a studio, can use Interval really for their entire business. And we also support studios, so we kind of have like a multi-instructor mode too. But like I said, our goal is to help any instructor or studio that's looking to launch their own virtual presence. And we kind of just are, really excited about learning what's out there, as well as giving instructors and studios the software to really, monetize as best they can in the coming years and months of this new hybrid post-pandemic space. So, I always like to talk to pretty much every instructor that joins our platform. So my emails are always open if you want to learn more, which is just Kyle, Kyle, @interval.com. Or you can just go to our website and check out like a little overview of everything that we do on interval.com. So interval.com. And you can sign up for an onboarding spot there. You can also just check us out on Instagram @useinterval. But really excited about kind of, empowering this next group of instructors and small boutique studios. And we've already seen instructors start to generate a lot of success, much more than they ever did in studio. And I'm just excited to see how that continues to grow going forward.
Amazing. Yeah, I had a chance to do a demo with you, Kyle, and I was just so impressed by how simple you guys have made everything, yet also functional. It's not simple in the fact that you don't have what teachers need. It's like meeting all of the needs of what somebody who's going to teach a yoga class or create, an on-demand library needs, while not making it overwhelming. And, there's so many great platforms out there, and I've used, I feel like my body always gets hated on a little bit. I actually do love my body. They do a great job, but there's so many things to learn. The amount of times I've called support being I don't know how to do this. It's 10 too many.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of features there. It's just a lot to chew at the beginning. And I think one of the things that we've been really conscious of is that student experience of booking a class. And we want to decrease any barriers to entry, because especially one of the things that you have to consider in the virtual space is, how can I get my offering to grow? And one of those things is decreasing any friction for students entering class. So we're completely passwordless, and we make it feel like you're just going to a yoga studio, popping your credit card down and then entering the room. And that's our real goal, is just make it as easy for students to book as possible, while also making it easy for the instructor to schedule, upload videos, record, etc.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that. So yeah, everyone should go check out interval.com. Thank you so much for your time today, Kyle. This has been a really awesome conversation. I feel like we've covered so much good ground here. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
I think, we've covered everything. The virtual space is quite encompassing. So we touched on a lot of it. I just say to any instructor that's listening in, your offering is worth something. And if you feel compelled or want to have a creative outlet and express like a different type of class or different type of flow, now's the time to be able to do that. And you don't need to kind of stick in the studio model for all of your classes. And I'm just really excited to continue to see like what instructors come up with in terms of their class types, durations, and how they kind of, use the video and virtual space.
Amazing. I can't wait to follow along. So thank you so much for your time today. This has been great.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, friends. I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Kyle Sanok from Interval. Make sure you go check Interval out. It's interval.com. I'll be sharing more about them on the podcast over the next couple of months, so you guys can get to know a little bit more about their software. And if you want to hear Kyle and I just kind of talk about where we think things are going in the yoga industry and where we think the future of yoga is headed, we had a really fun conversation for MBO behind the scenes. And you can get access to that at patreon.com/MBO yoga. So head on over there if you would like to get our insights, maybe join the conversation. And of course, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the show. I will see you on Monday for another brand new episode. Okay, bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.